When it comes to neighborhood change, it's hard to surpass the transformation of East Boston. Home to many of Boston's newest immigrants, the area is also attracting more young professionals. That makes for a mix of priorities, but also for a need to promote common ground. One effort in that direction is the recent neighborhood survey organized by a group of East Boston residents working with graduate students from Northeastern University. Our guest is the author of the report on the survey, an East Boston resident who's an assistant teaching professor at Northeastern with a Doctor of Law and Policy in the College of Professional Studies. We'd like to welcome Neenah Estrella-Luna. Thank you very much for being with us.
It's a pleasure.
First of all, talk about the people in the neighborhood who got this survey going.
So the folks who put Community Commons together, and really are the heart of Community Commons, are a group of neighborhood residents who are active, engaged, everyday leaders in the neighborhood. So there are folks who are engaged in neighborhood associations. They are part of AIR Inc., some of the longer-term neighborhood groups, people in the PTA, active mothers and fathers in the neighborhood, not elected officials, actually. The group made a very conscious choice in the beginning that elected officials and people close to elected officials would not necessarily be part of the planning of these surveys. They got together and decided that we would like to gather our own data about what we want and what we think we need in our own neighborhood. And so I brought some graduate students together to help us develop all of these surveys, and we've done two surveys so far.
Well, one of the things that you said in the report that you wanted to come out of this is a different approach to economic development. What did you mean by that?
And what we mean by that is an approach that actually integrates the neighborhood residents' current and future desires for how we see our neighborhood. And a lot of the development that has happened in East Boston has been driven by either speculation, and that's true from the beginning, from 1834 when the East Boston Company started developing the neighborhood through today. It's largely been driven by speculative type real estate development, and in the modern era sanctioned by decisions made by the Boston Redevelopment Authority. What we are saying is that the current way of doing that kind of development is insufficient. It's not meeting the needs of the neighborhood for today or sustainably in the long term. So more engagement of residents earlier on in development decision-making processes, and more evidence-based, and that's part of what this effort is all about, is to create a basis, an evidence basis for some of these decisions.
Well, we'll talk about one of the needs that you looked at in the survey, housing.
Yes.
Different people want different things. Some people more inclined toward market rate, some people more inclined toward affordable. What did you find from that mix?
This was actually one of the more surprising, for me at least, surprising findings from this past survey. More than half of residents that we surveyed, and this is a cross-section of the neighborhood, want both affordable housing and market rate housing. And there are some patterns that there are some people who are they're predictors of who wants market rate and doesn't want affordable. But overall, the vast majority of East Boston residents want a diversity of housing in the neighborhood. One of the questions that is raised by this survey is, what do people think affordable means? And I think when you listen to some of the rhetoric, especially some of the impolite rhetoric that you see on social media, there does seem to be a diversity of opinions and understandings about what affordable housing really means. Some people understand it from a legal perspective, some people understand it from a stereotype that it's Section 8. And so I think there's some work that needs to happen to actually disentangle some of those ideas. But overall, most of us want both housing that people can afford as well as market-based housing.
Well, one of the other things that's interesting is, yes, there is a certain percentage of people who are not comfortable with the changes in the mix in the neighborhood, but there's a much larger majority that wants to see more diversity, more engagement of different populations.
Yes, yeah, that was another, I have to admit, it was a pleasant surprise for me. This was the one question on this survey that I was very nervous about what was going to come out of this. And what we found was the overwhelming majority of residents in East Boston either are happy with or want more diversity in East Boston. And this is across the neighborhood, it's across all ways of dividing the neighborhood and the residents of the neighborhood. But folks really do want both to maintain the kind of diversity that is characteristic of East Boston and in some cases increase it. And we actually are seeing efforts to do things to actually increase the interaction of the diverse groups around the neighborhood too, because that was the other piece that was connected to the diversity question. A lot of what came out, especially in the written comments, was there's a lot of diversity in the neighborhood, but nobody interacts with each other. And we want more opportunity for greater engagement across the different boundaries that either have been imposed upon us by history or by larger social forces. And so, and again, it's happening already. So this past weekend, for example, the East Boston Library, in collaborating with an active group of Moroccan Muslim mothers who live in the neighborhood, created Arabic Culture Day. And so for 3 hours, if you went to the East Boston Library this past Saturday, you would learn about their culture and the foods and the music and the things that make their culture what it is to them. And from what I was told, and I was unfortunately unable to go, but from what I was told, it was a very successful event, and people want more of those kinds of interactions in the neighborhood. We've got other activities that are happening in the neighborhood that also promote this kind of interaction. So Veronica Robles, she operates our cultural center, which is about using the arts to promote interaction with the Latino culture in particular in the neighborhood. It's very, very popular set of activities that are happening there with music and dance and theater. And people across the neighborhood, across racial groups, across income groups, are gravitating towards these activities. And our survey shows that people want that and they want more of it.
Well, I certainly found some last week when I had my dinner at Maverick Square in one of the restaurants, all kinds of people sitting in there perfectly comfortable with each other. But when you look at civic engagement, you know, one of the things I guess you have to contend with is that you got the kind of people who go to neighborhood associations, very healthy phenomenon, they have a certain focus. Then you have other people with other needs, maybe they're renters, maybe they need to get classes in English. So is there one organization that could suit both of those different kinds of needs?
I don't think that there's one organization. I think you have to go to, and this is training from my public health days, you go to where people are and where they feel more comfortable. So I think with the diversity of needs, there needs to be a diversity of ways of meeting those needs and getting at the populations that have diversities of needs. We do have a lot of organizations in the neighborhood that are trying to meet some of the various needs. So we have NOAA, for example, that offers English language classes. And their main focus is housing, affordable housing, right? Their main focus is affordable housing, but they also have an arm, the community building and environment program, and their focus actually is around climate change and environmental education, and also connected to how do we make East Boston a healthy, safe, sustainable place to live, particularly in light of our climate change. We're highly vulnerable to climate change impacts. So there are organizations that are NOAA, EBEC, there are private language organizations, for example, providing English language learning. Not enough, as the survey shows. There's quite a lot of people who, and we see it from the wait lists as well. We need a lot more. It would be great if for example, the Boston Public Schools actually made our East Boston High School the community organization that it used to be in the early 20th century, when Jewish immigrants used to go to the East Boston High School to get acculturation and language lessons. It would be great if we could have something like that again too. But it does exist, there just needs to be more of those kinds of things. I don't think it can be one organization that does it. What I think is, and what my neighbors think too, in the variety of groups that I interact with, is that there needs to be a network of folks who can, if I meet you at my church, I happen to know that somebody might know something about something that you need, whether it's English language classes or daycare or an opportunity to get some education, or one of the needs that has come up both in this survey and in previous surveys, which has to do with entrepreneurship, how to start a business in the United States and do it legally. You asked a lot of interesting quality of life questions, but one thing I noticed in this report
is that nowadays people want more of a nightlife, not just places to eat tasty food. And different people want different things.
No, that's true. And people want different things, and people want diversity. Certainly those of us who are privileged to be in the higher income brackets, we particularly like to have access to a diversity of places to go and eat. And East Boston already provides that. What folks said in the written comments in particular is we would like more of the diversity of East Boston shown. So we have, for example, a Moroccan refugee community and a Somali community. Wouldn't it be great if we had a Moroccan or a Somali restaurant in the neighborhood? You know, those restaurants are hard businesses to sustain, but there is a demand, there seems to be a demand for things like that. What's interesting about this survey is that there is a split in terms of what kinds of entertainment type activities and recreational activities are desired. So the second largest, the second highest desired thing was family-centered entertainment. So things like movie theaters. There are very few of those kinds of places in East Boston. Now we have beautiful parks. We love our parks. We have fought for over half a century for some of the parks that we have. But the parks are good for outdoor recreation, certain times of year, and only certain types of outdoor recreation at that. Where could you go if you want to take your kids to see a movie, or the kids that you're babysitting to see a movie, or your grandkids when they come to visit you? You have to leave the neighborhood to do that. And so there's a desire for family housing. That's actually, like I said, that's the second highest desired thing that we found in this survey. The young, highly educated, higher income, primarily white residents, many of them who are new to the neighborhood according to the census, do want more nightlife type venues. They want to go dancing. They want to hear live music. We are beginning to see the development of some of those things. So Maverick Marketplace, for example, has music on Fridays and Saturday nights, and they have an open mic and that kind of thing. People want more of that. And that would be good for the neighborhood if it's maintained well. So I think nightlife venues, some folks are a little skeptical of it.
Yeah, you're afraid the neighbors will hear it, yes. Exactly.
Well, there's that, but we've had some bad experiences with clubs in our neighborhood. I mean, when I first moved there over a decade ago now, there was a club in the Orient Heights Square area, and I mean, I was just shocked to hear the lady that owns a house next to this club, who regularly saw people thrown through windows. So I think that because of the lack of enforcement, because of zoning and other issues, there's some skepticism among longtime residents, owners and renters, by the way, around nightlife venues. That's not to say that it can't happen. That's not to say that it couldn't be done well, because we do have some of that, and it is only something that's desired by a very small group of people.
We should mention people want some more details, someplace they can check that out?
So they can certainly email me, and you know, I'm a professor at Northeastern. I'm pretty easily found. They can also Google Community Commons East Boston, and that should take us to our Google page where we've archived all of our surveys, all of our reports, and any of the presentations that I've done.
Thank you very much for being with us.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, Professor Neenah Estrella-Luna from Northeastern University. Up ahead, Thanksgiving football highlights with Pat Flaherty.